American journalist James Foley has been kidnapped and is being held in Syria, according to his family, who, after weeks of asking media groups not to report on his abduction, yesterday began working to bring attention to the video journalist who was working as a freelancer for Agence France Presse. We here at The Post know this situation too well. Our freelance reporter Austin Tice was abducted in Syria this fall, and we worked for weeks behind the scenes before publicizing his case in late December. Delphine Halgand from Reporters Without Borders is here to talk about James Foley and a bit more broadly about situations like this. I think the first question people ask is, why now, after 6-7 weeks, is it finally made public? So what is that decision-making process? Why keep it private? Why decide to go public?
Okay, so as it's a really sensitive time for James' case right now, I would like to talk generally about how we proceed and not talk exclusively about his case. But when we know that a journalist is missing or kidnapped in a war zone, the first thing to do is to see with the family, and nowadays most of the time the family, if they want to go public or not. And it's a crucial issue, and what we observe is that since the Iraq war, most of the time families decide to wait a little bit before going public to give time and chance to diplomatic negotiation or even to military intervention.
And those usually go better if the public doesn't know about it?
It can help that the public doesn't know, because maybe the country concerned by the kidnapping would be easily convinced if it's not public.
Okay.
And what we observe is if the family or the employer of the journalist doesn't get a reliable interlocutor for the negotiation, or didn't get any news at all, after a certain time they decide to go public, to ask for information, and of course to appeal for the release. And that's what we observe now.
We know how difficult a story Syria is to cover. We have a sense of how dangerous it is. Very high-profile TV journalist Richard Engel was captured for several days, just, I guess, last week, maybe the week before. How tough is it to work in Syria right now? And
just to put it very simple, Syria is the most dangerous place for journalists right now. When I'm saying that, I'm thinking of the 17 professional journalists and the 44th Syrian citizen journalists which were killed in 2012 in Syria. It's also important to understand that these journalists were killed by Bashar al-Assad forces, but also by opposition groups, which become more and more intolerant of criticism.
You know James Foley.
Yes.
What can you tell us about him?
I can tell you that first, he's a professional journalist who is doing a great job. He's very well experienced in war zone. He's providing really useful and impartial coverage of what is happening in Syria. And more personally, I can tell you that he's a great person. Actually, I know him personally a little bit because he works a lot to raise money for the kids of a photographer who was killed in Libya. So, and if he's dedicated to that, it's because when Anton Amiral was killed in Libya in April 2011, James was with him, and James was at this moment imprisoned for 43 days. And so now James is doing an amazing job with other photographers to raise money for the kids of Anton Amiral, who was killed in Libya at this moment.
Well, thank you very much. We'll be following this, and obviously hope for the best.
Thank you.
Thanks.